Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for a look at Washington State Pride. We have a great program planned for you this evening. Before we get going, I would first like to acknowledge that the Washington State Historical Society is located on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people who have stewarded this land through the generations. We pay respect to their elders, both past and present. Also, we've been bringing you the Washington State Home Society series thanks to the help of our partners, Columbia Bank and KNKX. We're so thankful to work with them as partners. And we're so delighted to continue bringing you this virtual programming series throughout the pandemic while we've been away. However, we are transitioning back into person, but it's really great to be joined both from across the state as well as across the country from our presenters this evening. If you want to see all of our other upcoming virtual programs, you can check it out at the link provided. You should also consider becoming a member. It will give you access to the museum, to Columbia Magazine, or even become an Evergreen supporter. So the Evergreen League is a new giving program that supports vital operations at the Washington State Historical Society while also providing fun and unique benefits to League members, such as limited edition swag like what you see here. Some other examples would be Evergreen League supporters receive postcards featuring images of some of our vintage fruit packing labels that are held within our collection. Your ongoing donation helps us create fascinating exhibitions and allows us to continue bringing you all sorts of virtual events and programs, as well as soon in-person programs. As part of the Evergreen League, you can easily support your Washington State Historical Society with direct, worry-free contributions each month of $10 and up. You can allocate your gift to education, exhibitions, collections, or an area of greatest need. Should your situation change, you can easily opt out at any time, and you can learn more at the link that's provided in the chat. So as we get going this evening, of course, we have Len who's joining us on the Facebook Live side, managing the chat, giving you all of those amazing links. So please feel free to comment during the program, ask any questions you might have, because later on we are going to have a discussion and we're going to spend some time answering the questions that you might have. So we're going to start off by first talking about what is the significance of Pride and Pride parades. And I am delighted to introduce Dr. Kate McFarland Bruce, who is the author of this incredible book. We have Pride Parades, How a Parade Changed the World. The book grew out of her doctoral dissertation in sociology, for which she traveled the country attending Pride parades from Burlington, Vermont to San Diego, California. Though she is no longer active in the academic research, Kate loves the chance to talk about Pride and its role in LGBTQ history and the community. And welcome to you, Kate. We are so delighted you're joining us all the way from the East Coast. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I love Tacoma. My sister lives there. So I hope, and I lived in Seattle for a couple of years. So I always love when I get to get back here. So at least I can be virtually with y'all.
Absolutely. We're so thrilled to have you. Yes. Thank you for joining us.
So I am here to talk about how Pride parades got their start. And before I show all of my flashy pictures, I'll let you know. So as Molly introduced, this came from my dissertation on gay pride parades. A lot of that was the contemporary stuff, but I also was able to actually, by happenstance, really get into some of the history. My first parade that I did was in New York City, and one of my volunteers who was interviewing participants actually came upon the group that was the heritage group, the members of the first who had marched in the first parade in 1970 in New York City. And able by that random connection, I was able to meet this one gentleman who then connected me with 15 other people who had participated in early organizing, as well as marchers from those first parades, both in Los Angeles and New York. So a lot of my information is based on interviews with them, as well as looking at old LGBT periodicals, such as The Advocate of the time. So let's get to, we'll do our text screen share and hope that I do this correctly. And we'll get to it. All right, here we go. So The first pictures are pictures that I took, as I said, on contemporary, I should say 2010 in the publishing world, so that still is contemporary. And as most of us are really familiar with, Pride parades have a whole host of characters who attend and participate. At the bottom there, you see the Dykes on Bikes, which started in the 70s in San Francisco as a group of women said, you know, this would be a good way to start the parade. I saw Dykes on Bikes as few as 3 in Fargo, North Dakota, who led off the parade, and as many as the Rows and Rows in San Diego. You also often see parents and children, or often organized as PFLAG or just on their own, posing, expressing their love and support. That again was another feature of the 1970s. In 72, I believe, Jean Mansfield walked with her son, expressing support, and that's how PFLAG was started. And then you have church groups who often march in support there. Those came along slightly later, but even in the 70s, you actually had the Metropolitan Community Church, which was formed for the gay and lesbian community itself to serve. And so these features, and then so many more, really were present at the start, and as well as a lot of the controversies and a lot of the discussions we have today about how to do Pride, how to include those that we want to include, and how to present the messages that we want to present. So here's the map I created of the best data I was able to find of every Pride parade I could as of 2015. There were 115, and I count parades as those with some type of marching feature out on the streets. There's even so many more that host festivals and lots of other great events across the country. The stars there are the ones that I attended for my field work, and sadly, Washington State was not included in one of those, though I was able to stop over during my trip that summer. So as you see, from big communities to small, all across the country and in most states in the country, by my count, over 6 million people attend Pride parades every year. That's probably more since when I got the data. And 52% of LGBT people have said that they have ever been to a Pride parade. Pride is also in over 30 countries outside the US. I had the great fortune when I was in Peace Corps in Paraguay to happen upon a Pride parade in Asuncion, actually, as I had just come out. So I think, so many of us have had experiences like that in many different places. So to take us back, Pride Parade has a somewhat not as well-known precursor called the Annual Reminder. And this is a picture from it here. It was from 1965 to 1970, held at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and really directed towards the government in saying that we deserve rights, and also to society saying we should be, as the sign said, we should be judged as individuals, not as a group. Homosexual rights are civil rights. And I'll talk a little bit more about this, this event as well. To provide some context, in the 1960s, gay life, and just a note on terminology, I'm speaking mostly of gay and lesbian at the time because the terminology for trans and bisexuality and as well as queer were not quite, they were not in common usage then. So most people at the time talked about gay and lesbian, and so I follow that usage here. So in the 1960s, there was both more possibility to be out and gay and meeting people and forming lives with your same-sex partner than there ever were before and really in history. And so gay people were able to congregate and to live their lives while still having jobs and all of that, or at least some of them were, in a way that they really could never do before. At the same time, as we often see in many aspects in history, is that with this new change came quite a heavy backlash. So both churches, the psychological institute, medical institutions, as well as criminal, the criminal structure kind of really all made it hard to be gay. You could be arrested, you could be condemned, you could be sent to a mental institution for being out and for being gay. And this was really symbolized by gay bars at the time. So there were gay bars in many cities and small towns, and that was a really pivotal part of gay life. But those bars were also raided constantly by the police. They would shut it down, they would arrest everybody, they would take all the liquor, and then the bar would have to reset again. And so it made it a constant fear and a constant backlash, while also this exciting possibility to be able to go out and go to bars. So in that context, you had a number of gay organizations start trying to work for better treatment, better inclusion in society, and better treatment by the government. And the annual reminder was the first, collective demonstration to push for those rights. But the way they did it was called, we call it accommodationist. So the idea was just to say, we're not going to threaten the rest of society. We just want to be able to live how we are. And look at us. We are in ties, we're in dresses, we don't look that different. We're just like everybody else and just as respectable as everybody else. And so, let us live our lives. And that was the message given by the annual reminder. Of course, a lot of people were not in the gay community, were not included in that and couldn't really participate if they wanted to. So people who dressed in drag, people who didn't have the money for suits and dresses, and so many others were excluded from that and really felt like they shouldn't have to change who they are in order to receive rights, which is of course a theme that we continue to have today. So the annual reminders, while a really important event, were also limited in so many ways. And excuse me, I have a daughter who needs to be told to go to bed. Good night, sweetie. The challenges of pandemic continue. So we had the annual reminder, which was significant for what it was, but certainly had many issues. June 28th, 1969, we had the Stonewall riots. And so this was when a bar called the Stonewall Inn in New York City, well known and was notable. One way that it was notable is that it allowed dancing, and it was one of the few places that gays could congregate and dance together. It drew a wide crowd from the gay and lesbian community. So not just the quote unquote respectable folks who were part of the annual reminder, but also younger kids who lived on the street, called street hustlers, or those who dressed in drag, and those who were not conforming to society in the ways that many of the organizers were. So all these, they were having a good time at the Stonewall Inn, and then the police arrived for a fairly regular raid. And this time they just weren't having it. So they were able to, flip the tables and actually barricade the police inside the inn, while outside they demonstrated. And then it wasn't just those patrons, but word spread throughout the neighborhood. And so people came who weren't at the Stonewall that inn, who may have gone somewhere else or didn't even go to the Stonewall usually, but were looking for some, event and something to really get things going, because there was so much motivation and so much spark there. So this was really a spark there. And you see this quote from Tommy Mecca, a participant that I was able to interview, who just said, what was different about it is that there was this spirit of defiance. I saw, we don't care what you think, you can lock us up, but you're wrong and we're right. And we're not gonna be something different, and we're gonna fight as we are to be who we are. And so Stonewall happened. It was actually 3 nights. They would go to sleep during the day and then come back at night to demonstrate for longer. And news of this event spread throughout the country. There had been other raids and other defiance of those raids, but this was the one for a host of reasons that really caught on and really sparked activism continuing forward. So you had Stonewall, and then you had all these activists throughout the country and regular gay and lesbian folks saying, now's our time. Something's gonna happen, let's do something different. And they all met, there was a lot of discussion about it. And in November of that year, the East Coast Organization of Homophiles, which was what they were called at the time, got together and passed a resolution that the text up here on the screen. And so they were saying, let's change the annual reminder. Let's make it more relevant. Let's include more people. And let's have it be broader than the accommodation, but rather say this is our fundamental rights. We're going to be who we are, and we're not going to apologize for who we are. And a note there at the bottom, it says no dress or age regulation shall be made for this demonstration. And that was a big deal. The fact that they weren't going to try to police what people look like or what message they give, that they were just going to say, come out and be who you are. So we get to the big event. So June 28th, 1970, I believe it was 2 p.m. at New York City. They started at the Stonewall Inn in on Christopher Street, and they marched up to Sheep's Meadow in Central Park, which is a very long walk. But they, from what I heard from those who I talked to, it was a joyous walk and a joyous march the whole way there. So as you see pictures from the event, you had people dressed in kind of their casual street clothes. You had various displays of bell bottoms were fairly prominent from what I hear. And then you had holding hands. A lot of people talked about the fact that they could show affection both for their friends and for their partners out in the streets in a way that they just really had not ever done before. The demonstration, the count that I read was about 3,000 people who participated, which, you know, was a phenomenal gathering of gays and lesbians that really had not been seen before. I talked to a participant who was just kind of hanging around New York that day and had some friends, and they were going out to brunch, and then they said, let's go to this parade, and they did it. So you had folks like that, as well as the committed organizer who'd been working for years to put on something like this. So they gathered, they made their signs, they marched, they danced, they chanted, and they had, from what I hear, a great time. The lack of a dress code, as noted, was a big deal to a lot of people. A lot of participants talked to me about that. And then also a big deal from an academic standpoint, and one thing that we kind of note is that they didn't have specific demands. They didn't say, you know, some said, you know, of course, police harassment, let's stop that. But they didn't have, you know, we demand this, this, and this, and present it to the government. Instead, their demand was to the culture and to the society to just say, you know, we're here, stop pretending we're not, and we're not going to change. So you had New York City, this grand demonstration through the streets. On that same day, later in the day in Los Angeles, was Christopher Street West, they called it. And that was on the streets of Hollywood. We have a fairly grainy photo here, but it says groovy guys make groovy stars. So even in that first parade, you had a float, you had scantily clad men, and you had people cheering. And the Los Angeles parade really was a parade as we think of it today. There were, as we said, clowns, horses. There was in the permit even asking for a small elephant, but I'm not sure if that actually made it there. You had the church choir singing Onward Christian Soldiers. You had lots of different groups of people coming through. And then you had activists putting on, you know, really pointed demonstrations as well. So that was from the beginning, this parade and this celebration. And in Los Angeles in particular was where we saw that that started. From there, from 1970, you see the timeline here of more cities, groups in those cities starting parades. We had Seattle in 1975. I apologize if I get any of these dates wrong. This was the best information that I could get. And in each of those, throughout this early time period, they really debated a lot of things we still debate today. In what ways should businesses participate in religious groups? How much activism should there be versus, you know, fun, dancing? Is the fun and dancing activism itself? All of those things were really debated. How much of a parade should it be versus more of a march where we're all gathered together and don't have all the bells and whistles? So organizers really worked that out and tried out different things throughout the early 70s. And it was by 1975 that it solidified in the form that we know today, and that most parades that we see follow, where you would have lots of different organizations from, with different perspectives and affinity groups who would all participate together. And that the thing that really held them together was the idea that this celebration of who you are and the visibility was the point. It wasn't, and it was different than other types of social movements had enacted before. And Pride has become a vehicle for so many different types of displays, so many ways of building community, as well as so many different debates that we have within the community about how to present ourselves and how to include everyone that we can, and so many other issues that I'm sure we'll be able to talk about today. So I'm going to end there with 1975 in Seattle, and we will continue on. And I'm so excited to hear about Pride parades happening in the state today. And I'll be here to talk with you at the end of those presentations for our discussion period. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction just to the whole idea of Pride parades as a form of activism, but celebratory, and something that is really unique in the history of the United States in particular, and how you might approach changing people's perspectives and kind of leading into a new form of activism. So thank you for setting the stage. And yes, we will be talking to you again here shortly. And again, Kate's book, Pride Parades, find it at your local independent bookstore or order it from NYU Press. Len is sharing that in the comments if you haven't already seen that, and we will revisit this. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for all of you out there, let's make the transition into how this applies to Washington State. So as Kate just pointed out in that last slide, the first official Pride parade that was happening in Washington State did take place in Seattle in 1975, but really the first kind of considered Pride parade in Seattle was in 1974, which marked the 5-year anniversary after the Stonewall riots in 1969. And then by 1977, just 3 years after that initial parade, the parade had 2,000 attendees. The Seattle mayor attended and actually declared it Gay Pride Week. Then by 1992, the Seattle Pride festivities expanded to include bisexual and transgender communities. And now today, Seattle Pride is the 4th largest in the country, with an estimated 500,000 members of the community joined with friends and allies. So quite an incredible event. That being the first in Washington State. But in a little bit, we're going to be hearing about all of the different Pride events and Pride parades that are taking place across all of the regions of the state. But first, I wanted to share a little bit about what we have at the Washington State Historical Society. At the Washington State Historical Society, we definitely believe that all LGBTQIA+ history is Washington State history. And we are very fortunate to be the stewards of numerous collections that preserve this history. So I wanted to point out some of the materials that we have. We love collecting ephemera. And for those of you that don't know, ephemera are paper materials that were intended to be used for a short period of time. So one example is this gay guide that was created for the Pacific Northwest for 1975, meant to be used for the summer period, that highlighted different places to go, different events, who you should look out for. Kind of that great guide to what your experience should be like. So we love having these pieces of ephemera that give a snapshot in time. And then we also maintain all of these other pieces of ephemera, like posters that announced events or outlined different components of different events. So this one taking place in 1993, again, that march in Seattle and all of the subsequent related events. I'll go ahead and point out one section in particular, one collection that's of tremendous interest to me. So right here, you see a number of images that are actually part of what was called the Seattle Lesbian Gay Pride Parade. And these are all images from the parade in 1988. So these are part of the Thomas Flint collection. Let me tell you a little bit about Thomas Flint. Between 1982 and 1986, he served in the United States Air Force in Germany and then at McCord Air Force Base in Tacoma. In 1986, he was discharged following the discovery of his homosexuality. He was radicalized by attending the National March on Washington for Lesbian Gay Rights in 1987, and he became a militant gay activist back in Seattle. He co-founded ACT UP Seattle in 1988 and was active in Queer Nation and a number of other activist groups. Between 1987 and 1999, Flint also worked as a writer and editor for the Seattle Gay News. The groups of organizations and the files are all maintained in the Washington State Historical Society collections. And there's kind of two sets of files. One that includes information on anti-gay campaigns from the 1990s, and then another set of photographs, which are what you are seeing here. And actually, it's really interesting, the photographer of all of these images throughout the years, basically documenting the ones that we have here are different Seattle lesbian and gay pride parades. His name was Donald Augustin, and all of the photographs taken between 1988 and 1993 were captured by him. You'll also see, and I love getting to talk about these great collections that we have, but you can see these numbers that are associated with each image. This in the museum world is what we call accession images, or accession numbers, excuse me, they're of images, accession numbers. So the accession numbers, numbers with different periods in between, designate the year that the material was collected. The next number indicates the number of the donor who would have donated, and then the subsequent numbers actually identify the material within that. So in this case, the 3 would represent all of the images that are collected, the photographs in the Thomas Flint papers, and then the number after that. So for example, for this P-flag one, the last number is number 2, so it's the second image within the collection. And these are all taken from 1988. And let me show you a couple. I just love this Cabot Bro one. I want to know more. The unfortunate part of these photographs is there aren't details with each individual photograph. We just know general details, but they're really a great snapshot in time. This is from Seattle's 1989 Gay Lesbian Pride Festival. You can see here it's marking the 20th anniversary after Stonewall. All the folks that are attending. This is from 1991. You see that the Pride Festival is becoming more and more popular, particularly with mainstream Seattle, in this case, politicians, people hoping to get elected. So pictured here is Sherry Harris, who was running for city council at the time, and she was elected and served until 1995. All of these additional groups, People of Color Against AIDS Network. And then, of course, we have an excellent button collection. We have hundreds and hundreds of buttons that represent all sorts of different political viewpoints, takes, but our gay, lesbian, general pride button collection is tremendous. So we love having not only photographs, digital images, pieces of ephemera like you were seeing, but also real artifacts. So 3-dimensional buttons. We have many t-shirts. I love these. Pride changes everything, which is what we're talking about this evening. And we really want to invite all of you to share your Washington Pride with us. If you have something that you think should be held in the state's Historical Society's collections, if you have something significant or something that just marks a moment in time that you want us to hold for posterity for the future to better understand these movements in our state's history, you can reach out directly to Margaret Weatherby, who's our head of collections at the Washington State Historical Society. Her email is given here. We also have really easy to access online forms. So the link is right there. You can see some of the more contemporary images, pieces of ephemera, buttons that we have in the collection. And we would love to get representation from across the state. Anything that you feel should be held in our collection, we are happy to have and happy to talk to you about. And actually, I'm just going to take a moment and show you a little bit of our collections page. Let me pull up that screen. So as you can see here, you just visit washingtonhistory.org/research/collections. And in here, you can type in pride, gay, lesbian, transgender. You can also look up Thomas Flint papers to find all of those collections, or you can type in those accession numbers that I was talking about to identify individual objects, artifacts, pieces of ephemera. You can also go to our collections donations. And this is the really easy to use collection donation inquiry. So you just shoot us a really easy form and we would be happy to keep ephemera, digital images, anything that you might like to share with us. So on that note, I think it's time to actually talk about what Pride really looks like here in Washington State. So we are delighted to be joined by 3 different organizations that represent Spokane, Tacoma, and Grays Harbor that are going to talk about the history of their individual events and what those events look like today before we join in a full discussion and question and answer session. So I would like to now introduce our representative from Spokane Pride, Esteban Arabia. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Esteban uses he, him, his pronouns and serves as president of Spokane's Pride Parade and Rainbow Festival, is vice president for the United States Association of Prides, and communications co-chair for Interpride, the International Association of Pride Organizations. He co-founded Wonderfully Made Spokane, a nonprofit entrusted with increasing inclusion and celebration of the LGBTQ+ people in faith communities. His experience extends to facilitating gender and sexual identity cultural competency workshops, developing inclusive programming models, communication strategy and design, event and visual production, developing and sustaining inclusive faith-based environments, strategic planning, and interpersonal development for LGBTQ+ people. Paravia writes, I am beyond grateful to be included in the work of creating spaces for our LGBTQ+ community members and to develop their identities, affirm their experiences, and express pride in their identities. It is such a pleasure that you are joining us this evening, Esteban. That is quite the bio. I'm so excited to hear from you and about what's been happening in Spokane.
It's a weird life. You know, if my 15-year-old self could see where I am now, I think he would have a lot of hope. So it's definitely very, very weird to be in this space and to be joining you. But also such an honor and such a privilege to be working with an organization that has so much history and in a city that still needs pride every single day. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for what you do and happy Pride. And thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, Molly, would you be willing to start us off with that video?
Absolutely. Let me get it set up.
Awesome. So Molly's going to show us a video of the very first Pride that took place in Spokane. And what's pretty significant is as we turn into a new calendar year, using Pride Month as the helm of the calendar, we are entering into our 30th year of celebrating Pride here in Spokane. And so I thought, how appropriate would it be for you to watch the very first march that happened here?
First ever Pride March. Now, they want to stamp out homophobia and be able to come out of the closet without fearing for their well-being or losing their jobs.
And as KREM 2's John Phillips reports, those fears are still around. They were even around during today's march.
Gays, lesbians, their parents, and their straight friends take to the streets of Spokane. They hope their visibility in this first ever march will lead to understanding.
We need to come out and be able to let other people know that we're important too.
It is wonderful. I've spent 36 years hiding and lying to myself and to others and to family and relatives and friends. And God, it's just the unity and the power of just saying to Spokane and saying to ourselves, hey, we're gay, we're equal.
Still, some marchers wore disguises. They're worried about losing jobs and friends.
I mean, I shouldn't have to do this. I should be able to come out and show my own face because I am proud of who I am and what I stand for because I am different just like everybody else.
I think it takes a lot of courage to do this and that all the people that are out here today are really brave.
Next year we'll be in the streets. Next year we'll be in the...
Some 500 people joined in, including marchers from Seattle, Portland, the Tri-Cities, and Bellingham. No hecklers, only a couple of Roman Catholics whose handouts became throwouts.
Well, we're giving them instruments for conversion.
Yeah.
So messages from Our Lady, the Virgin Mary, and Jesus.
Police officers were there to keep the peace. Some bystanders were less than impressed by it all.
Gayism, I'm against it. I don't like it. Take it elsewhere.
Interesting.
It's their prerogative, but it's holding up traffic.
A lot of homophobia is caused by ignorance. People don't understand that a person's sexual orientation, be it heterosexual or homosexual, is something they're born with, probably.
Civil rights or civil war. Civil rights or civil war.
At the federal courthouse, there were slams for Uncle Sam over the treatment of gays and lesbians and AIDS policies. During this first ever march, there were hopes that the winds of change are coming.
The march for that, from now for as long as it takes until our children, our loved ones are afforded those rights.
Every year, marches seem to grow in size in cities like Seattle. Organizers of this march are hoping the same thing happens in tiny conservative Spokane. In Spokane, John Phillips, Prem 2 News.
Now, the organization called Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays sponsored today's event. They hope to do it again in June of 1993.
Members walk down the streets and let everyone know they're gay and proud of it.
We're queer. We're fabulous. Get used to it. We're here. We're queer.
Organizers expected about 50 people to support Spokane's first ever Gay Pride March. Instead, they estimate 500 to 600 marched down the streets. They stopped along the way for talks and singing.
We are gay straight together.
Following the march, the group ended up here at Riverfront Park for a picnic. Many of them took the opportunity to discuss why it took Spokane so long to have a gay pride celebration. Some say many of Spokane's gay and lesbians still have an intense fear of being recognized. They say that may have changed with this event.
That's okay to wait a bit. I think we just had to wait till Spokane was ready. And obviously today Spokane was ready.
I didn't see much shock. I didn't see much anti-comments or activity going on, except for one pair that came through the park here first. But I think they'll be made more aware now.
Spokane's gay and lesbians also did a little networking and politicking. Some even planned next year's event.
They'll see how much fun we had.
Yep. And next year it'll be bigger than this.
Today's march was sponsored by a group called Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. People from all over the region and as far away as Seattle attended today's march. Well, one of the
Yeah, it's always very interesting to tell folks that we started in 1992 and there were a lot of folks who showed up. And here now we look 30 years later at a history and legacy of people who were committed to the inclusion of the LGBTQ plus community, not only here in Spokane, but in Eastern Washington. Something also very important to note is in the first video that we saw, they interviewed Helen Bonzer. Helen was the very first organizer of Spokane Pride and the first Pride March. She also was a part and helped start the Spokane chapter of PFLAG. She has passed away now just a couple weeks ago. So our city and our community, we mourn her loss, but we also honor the work that she's done and the path that she laid for us to be here today. And so we thank her, we lift her up, we lift up her family. But we also reflect that without her and that group of people to hit those sidewalks, we would not be where we are today. And so in Spokane, we celebrate Pride every second weekend in June. Obviously, this year has been a little bit different, but now we serve over 30,000 people in still the same place, Riverfront Park. And we have a festival and a parade just like they did since day one. And really our goal has remained the same, to include and to celebrate the LGBTQ plus community here in Spokane. We also have the opportunity to serve as the largest free Pride festival in Eastern Washington and within a 300-mile radius, obviously Seattle being the next largest Pride event and Boise coming in at second. But it truly is an honor for us to serve not only our own community, but the communities that surround us. We understand that for many folks, Pride truly is the one day they get to be who they are, to show up in their outfit, to wear new hair, to wave the flag for the very first time. And so we take this work very seriously. I'm sure many of my colleagues are going to talk about how for folks, you know, this is they perceive it as a party. But in reality, we're doing the work of freedom. We're giving folks the opportunity to experience their full self, sometimes for the very first time, and for others over and over and over again. And so this work is so crucial. Now, this year obviously has been way different. Last year was even more different with switching over to virtual programming. This year we tested some smaller pop-up events, but we look forward to celebrating with our city again on Saturday, October 9th. And we're gonna be doing the parade and festival one more time. And we look forward to just the opportunity to gather folks and to affirm their experiences. We know how crucial it is, and we're gonna do our very best to show up and to do it right and to do it well. Something also that's very important for us to note is our name, Spokane Pride, is new for us. Many folks have known us as Out Spokane. In 2006, the nonprofit Out Spokane came together when a group of folks thought, you know what, we should put some more legs to this, give it some more foundation. And since the inception of the nonprofit, we have continued to grow and to grow and to grow. With now serving over 30,000 people. I can't stop saying that because it's just so much. And when you know, if you know anything about being LGBTQ plus here in Eastern Washington, or if you know anything about the history of hate here in Eastern Washington, for us to be able to do that truly is a feat, but it's also something that we want to celebrate every single day. And our hope is to continue to grow. We don't ever want to stop. So I would love for you to take a look at one last video. This captures video of the last time that we were able to march, and it kind of gives you a sense of where we're going. If you would love to learn more about us, we would encourage you to find us on Facebook and on Instagram at Spokane Pride. Head to our website at spokanepride.org. Connect with us, volunteer with us. If you're not doing anything in October, come on over to the eastern side of Washington or join us in Spokane. We'd love for you to be with us. Again, we're so honored and so thankful to have a moment to capture our story here with each of you. So Molly, if you wouldn't mind pulling up that last video, and then I think I'm good. Again, if you'd love to connect with us, we encourage you to go and find us on Facebook and on Instagram at Outspokane, or head to our website, spokanepride.org. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm like tearing up from watching everyone just being out and celebrating. I miss getting to do that so much. So thank you for reminding us how good it's going to feel when we can come to Spokane in October and be together in person. So we are now going to move west across the state. We're going to go over the Cascades and we are going to land in Tacoma. So joining us from Tacoma is Marshall, who is the celebration manager at Rainbow Center here in Tacoma, where his primary responsibility is managing the logistics of Tacoma Pride Festival and the Black and White Gala. Often referred to as the David Tutera of Tacoma, Marshall hopes he'll show up and show out for Tacoma Pride this year on July 10th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us, Molly. Again, my name is Marshall. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the celebration manager at Rainbow Center. I just want to give a brief history on Pride in Tacoma. So it started off as a separate entity from Rainbow Center. According to Troy Christensen, our executive director at Rainbow Center, it was its own separate entity. It was a nonprofit called Out in Tacoma, and they were the host organization who did Out in the Park. And so that was sort of the first Pride Festival. And then just like over the years, Rainbow Center eventually absorbed Out in the Park and Out in Tacoma. And that sort of transitional period happened in between like 2002 and 2009. And let me just share my screen. So this is just like a flyer from 2010. So this would have been after the acquisition. And so 2010 enters the chat. We see Rainbow Center and Out in Tacoma fully merged at this point, but they retained the name Out in the Park. And so I think it started in Wright Park, at least this one did. And then so this is a diagram of a setup, relatively small. And then it transitioned from Wright Park to where our Tacoma's Farmers Market is on Broadway between 9th and 11th. And then it continued on. This is like from that period. This is out on Broadway. There's a drag performance here. There are some patrons and people celebrating Pride in Tacoma. This is just like an outline, an itinerary of the main stage and the second stage. And this is still, again, out in the park on Broadway. And then it transitioned down to where it currently is on Pacific Avenue between 9th and 11th. And so it almost probably doubled in size. And so you have like the participation from like the Matador and from, you know, places like Dorky's Arcade. It even extended out into like Fireman's Park. So yeah, it definitely has like come a long way. This is a very infamous photo from like 2019, the last time that we had an in-person event. So yeah. So now, as far as our Pride is concerned, this year, very similar to what it was last year, we'll have a virtual Pride Parade that will include videos from our community sponsors and from our community partners. We'll also be encouraging our network and the community to support our Points of Pride, which was our way of having a street festival, but sort of citywide. And it was just a much safer way to sort of have a celebration and have businesses and organizations recognize Pride, but also be sort of COVID friendly and mindful, even if we are coming out of the pandemic. And even though that things are open back up in Pierce County, we still wanted to be cognizant. We'll also have a myriad of events happening throughout July. Actually, one happened today. So TPU did a Pride flag raising at their building, which was joined by the mayor and a lot of TPU, Tacoma Public Utility faculty and staff. But we'll have some really great events that will be all ages. We'll have a movie in the park that's in partnership with the Grand Cinema and Metro Parks. We'll be showing Saturday Church. We'll also have the Gay Bar in Tacoma will be hosting a block party. There'll also be a party at the Tacoma Art Museum on July 15th from 5 to 8, which will be free in all ages. And then Alma Mater has been such a brave supporter of Tacoma Pride, and so they'll be hosting several rooftop parties. The first being a pre-funk Pride party on July 7th. They'll also have a drag show on the rooftop July 9th, and then they'll have sort of a DJ set July 10th. So yeah, if you are looking for more information about Tacoma Pride, you can visit us online at tacomapride.org or look us up on Facebook and Instagram. That would be at Tacoma Pride Festival. And then if you have any questions, feel free to email me. My email is marshall@rainbowcenter.org. And yeah, I'll give it back over to Molly. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much. That was so wonderful. It's so fun to look back to the past in Tacoma and just see like how everything has evolved over time and just what a big citywide event this has become thanks to Rainbow Center's work and just the organization around coordinating partners and organizations. It's a lot of fun, I have to say, as a past participant. So we're looking forward to everything that you're organizing for this year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And moving even further west for our final look at Pride events in the state, we are going to be joined by two individuals representing Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition. So I'd first like to welcome Jade Gillis, who uses they, them pronouns. Jade is president of the Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition and has been vice president for the last 2 years. They have been an activist and an advocate for many years after coming out at age 17 in very rural Grays Harbor, Washington. And we're also joined by Caesar Hart, using he, him, his pronouns. Caesar is your Pacific Northwest drag king performer and has been so for the past decade. Caesar began his drag king journey in Kent, Washington, and took Seattle by storm, performing at popular shows like Bacon Strip, Julia's on Broadway, Neighbors Nightclub, and benefits like Icon for Seattle Counseling Services. He was your host for Seattle Pride Parade and Pride Fest main stage, and he is your past Mr. Neighbors for the oldest gay bar in Capitol Hill, Neighbors Nightclub. In the past 5 years, he has started producing and hosting his own shows called Small Town Big Hearts Drag Review and Hearts of the Community, an all-ages drag show in the Grays Harbor area. Each show raises money to help local nonprofits and locals in need. Caesar is not only a drag king for his community, but also an advocate and activist for social injustices against marginalized groups of people. He is a scholar, award recipient, and recent graduate from WSU with a BA in Communications and a minor in Sociology. Caesar continues to use his Drag King platform to help create LGBTQ and ally spaces to help build our communities. He currently is working with Humanities Washington in the Speaker Bureau program, the first in the history of the program to speak on LGBTQ content and experience, a program that I'm personally very fond of. So welcome to you, Caesar. Thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you. I can't turn on my video. It says you cannot start your video because the host has stopped it.
Well, so, that host is not, okay, here we go.
There we go, start my video.
Yeah, it's always something. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, everyone. I'm so grateful to be here. So excited to talk about all the greatness that we do out on the harbor.
So excited to have you.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having us. Like Molly said, my name is Jade Gillis. I'm the Vice President of Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition and have been for the last couple of years. Caesar and I are very excited to present to you our history of Pride here in Grays Harbor. So without further ado, I'm going to start sharing my screen and we're going to check it out. Let's see. All right. So our first, just talking a little bit about Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition. Our mission is we are an organization dedicated to advocacy and education to create a just society free of discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And our vision is to create a community where everyone can live freely without fear of violence, where our identities, relationships, and families are respected, in creating a safe harbor for all humans to express themselves free of judgment. So really from the very beginning, the idea behind Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition was creating a safe space for everyone, regardless of social status, age, gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, and just really acting against any discrimination or inequality within our community and beyond. Caesar, do you have anything to add on about Out and Proud?
Other than what you just put up there? No, I think you covered it. Right. But we can talk about the very beginning back in 2013, because that's
yes. So
and, there you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, so our Pride, it arguably started in 2013. A local news story about the Backstage Cafe and how they were advertising a traditional couples night, specifically excluding non-heterosexual couples. This stems a social justice movement by Jen Gillis, our Out and Proud president, and my wife, very excited, and stemmed a 2013 protest, which just had a bunch of people come out and spread love and just say, you know, you can't really exclude us. It's discrimination. It's you say it's against your religion, but we're in a nation free from discrimination and free of religious persecution. So it's really, it stemmed a lot, and actually the cafe closed shortly after. So we got that hate out of the harbor, which was really great. Then from that point on, there was a lot of small moving pieces going on in the harbor, from some discrimination at a local high school to just advocating for locals in the community, which brought us to our first annual Pride Festival in 2014. Which we held in Hoquiam on 8th and Levy, with the advertisement of "Let's show that the people of Grace Harbor believe in love and acceptance of all families." More than 2,000 people were in attendance, and it was the first year that we started the Rocky Horror Picture Show as a follow-up to Pride.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we had our drag show that same night in the street.
Yes.
We set up a little makeshift stage with some lights, and though we were by the water, I still think it was one of the coolest events we've had since then, for sure.
Absolutely. And actually, one of my favorite stories from that first Pride, and this can be found on our website as well. And so I'm just going to read a quote. There was a particular story that caught our hearts. 2 elderly gentlemen got up early and drove a few hours to attend the festival. They were overcome with tears of joy when they found that they could walk hand in hand on the streets of their hometown. These 2 individuals met in high school and moved away to find a place where they could be in love and accepted. So it was really stories like that that kept Pride going and kept the momentum, and really just showed Grace Harbor and the people of Grace Harbor that we needed Pride in our community. Not just once a year, but every day of the week, every hour of every day, love and acceptance for all. The following year, in 2015, we continued our event on 8th and Levy Street in Hoquiam. This year, we had a pre-Pride event called Dog Sees God, which I do have a blurb about, but if people are interested, I can share that. And it was followed by a free all ages drag show hosted at the 7th Street Theater by Caesar Hart.
And that's a historical theater, so it was just the experience of being in that building for the show was amazing. It had 1,000 seats in there too, and all of them were filled. It was so much fun. But we moved on to bigger and better things, I have to say, which is the nicest part about doing stuff out here on the harbor, is that we get to go to historical locations and do our thing.
Yes. And again, we just continue. We had our 3rd Pride Festival again down in Hoquiam, and we had that same momentum with a drag show with a tagline of "Out of the Closets and Into the Streets." That was a lot of fun. It was a great year. That was actually the first Pride Festival I had ever attended in Grace Harbor. So that was a really exciting time for me. Going to the fourth year, again, Hoquiam, we introduced Walk a Mile in their shoes and partnered with Beyond Survival, which for those of you who aren't familiar with Walk a Mile, it is to raise awareness about rape and the violence within that, not community, but within that area. We also did the drag show, and that was also the first year that Events on Emerson in Hoquiam put on a pre-Pride prom. Try saying that 3 times fast. So that was a lot of fun. The next year we moved to Olympic Stadium with the drag show and the Pride prom. We have a few pictures from that, and we went with the tag "Hoist Your Colors High." And then this was our last in-person Pride event in 2019. We had it at Shops at Riverside, and it was the first year that we had an indoor event. We had, I want to say, between 40 and 60 vendors that attended, games, and just an amazing turnout. I remember, you know, the festival winding down, and we had a lull period between the festival and the drag show. And we were all so worried that no one was going to show up to the drag show, because it was like, I think it started at 7, and around 6:30 we still had like nobody there. But by the time 7 o'clock rolled around, we were pulling chairs from everywhere we could find them, because we only had standing room available. The place was packed, and it was just a beautiful thing. And one of our best festivals, in my opinion, that I've been to. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Shops at Riverside is basically like our local mall. So yes, they had, that was whenever it was open. Now it's not due to some structural damage, but there are some parts of it that are able to still be up. But that was definitely one of the best Pride events, because there were just booths going down all directions. People were playing games and doing crafts and winning prizes all day. It was one of the best ones for sure.
Absolutely. And then COVID hit. So we did a virtual Pride. COVID made us do it. It ended up being just over 6 hours with a mix of live and pre-recorded material. Caesar Hart and in drag, JJ Ryder, also known as Jen Gillis, our president, hosted the event in a socially distanced center, and we had a blast just playing games and talking about Pride in Grace Harbor, and just really spreading the love as much as we could. We had our art design actually from a local pair of sisters who actually, kind of a cool fact is, I took them to their first Pride in Seattle a couple years prior. So we had them create our graphic that we then distributed and had people color and had a lot of fun with. Which brings us to today and our 8th annual Pride Festival that we will be having in October. We're partnering with Grace Harbor Historical Seaport to bring you our We're Still Standing Pride. And it is going to be a Halloween theme, so pull your skeletons out of the closet and come on by. Lady Washington will be there for tours. We will have the drag show. We will have pre-Pride prom on the 22nd, hosted by Events on Emerson. And we're really, what was that?
It's all ages for the Pride prom?
Yes, all ages. All of our events for Pride are all ages. So we really try to keep it family friendly as much as possible.
And free.
And free, absolutely free. We'll also be having giveaways and raffles or opportunity drawings and lots of fun things going on throughout the day. So we're really excited. We want this to be our biggest Pride yet. So some media representation throughout the years that Out and Proud has been a part of. Going back to 2017, we had another protest, and we were protesting the tavern that was in Hoquiam, who was outwardly homophobic and threatened lots of members of the LGBTQ community. I don't know if it was directly related to our protest, but they did shut down a few months later and is now inhabited by a new bar that is LGBTQ friendly.
That's right. There's no hate on the harbor.
No, we don't tolerate hate on the harbor.
There's no hate.
Yeah. So, and then a couple of other posts of drag shows thrive and Hoquiam Pride events, and then our involvement with the GSA discrimination at Aberdeen High School. We stepped in and had a forum for that to really try to help the students on the harbor that were affected by some not so great actions. And behavior by other people.
Yeah, wasn't good.
Some of the past events that we have done. In 2016, we held a vigil for the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting. We've been a part of the Founders Day Parade in the past, the LGBTQ+ Youth Community Forum, as I was talking about with the discrimination against the AHS GSA. And then right before COVID shut the world down, we were able to hold one LGBTQ+ family fun night at the Aberdeen Extreme Fun Center, which we were hoping to hold more that year, but plans didn't go as planned, but COVID.
Exactly. Shut that down real quick, didn't it?
Exactly, but we've come out on the other side, and we do have upcoming events and programming happening. So our most recent one, and if you are able to come down for it, July 3rd is the Aberdeen Founders Day Parade, and we will be walking in the parade, passing out information about Pride and just spreading the love. We will also be a part of the Rain Glow Festival on the 24th of this month, which is basically an all ages rave, as I understand it.
Right. All ages, and we get to light up the streets with our creations of light.
Yes, and I believe alleyways are going to be closed down and decorated, and just all sorts of things going on. Shortly after that is going to be our 8th annual Grace Harbor Pride that we talked about on October 23rd. And then we have some programming that we want to bring to the harbor. Me personally, I am a giant nerd. And I love me some D&D. So I want to bring in one-shot campaigns that are just friendly for all. But what I've come to find out is D&D actually has a huge LGBTQ following because you can really create characters who are everything you want to be and more, and things that you can never be. So fun fact about me, I main a dragonborn barbarian, which is a lot of fun. And I'm excited to bring it to the one-shots. We also are very excited to start introducing support groups soon, which will be held at the Aberdeen Extreme Fun Center in some of their rooms, and then more family fun nights at local businesses, and just really throwing some more events for families. A lot of things that are LGBTQ related typically are 21 and over or 18 and up, like clubs and things like that. So it's really important to us to provide places where it's not an expectation that you are there to party or drink or things like that, but really bring it into, you know, Pride is all ages, all walks of life. And so our family fun nights are a good representation of that. So we look forward to having them soon.
Yes. Lord knows it's time.
We're ready.
I need my people. I need my people.
For sure.
And then
finally, additional resources in Grace Harbor. We do have a couple of different groups that we do our best to coordinate with. Harbor Include being the youth organization on the harbor. It's a drop-in program for LGBTQ youth and their friends, ages 13 to 18. It's typically held at events on Emerson, and they just create a safe space on Friday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. And they do everything from watch movies, play games, to
do crafts, to clothing swaps. What else?
Yes. They provide snacks and food. I remember that they were doing food grab bags shortly after the world shut down for youth who were no longer able to attend things because we weren't allowed to have things, in-person events. So they handed out grab bags, and we're trying to do things pretty regularly for youth. And then our East County group is Come As You Are, or KAYA for short. And they're an education and support group. And they hold meetings the second Thursday of each month from 5:30 to 7:30 at Summit Pacific Medical Center in Elma. And so you can see at the bottom, the first hour is open to anyone really, and features speakers and different events and presentations. And then the second hour is really for just youth, to provide a safe space for them to engage in discussions and games and other activities. So they've been doing programming for 2 or 3 years now. It started with a gal, or a high school student named Sophia, and she was it Miss Teen Washington? And she was running on a platform of LGBTQ rights. So she was a very big ally and supporter, and did a lot of great things, and has brought a lot of speakers to the harbor. Sorry, my cat just scared me. He jumped on the table. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, they've had good speakers come out.
Yeah, they've had lawyers and doctors and just all of these high-powered people in the community. And so I definitely recommend everyone check them out. they have very good resources, and they're really great people as well.
Yes, 100%.
Obviously, I guess questions slide. Questions, yes. But yeah, so we have a lot of cool things happening on the harbor, and it just has been growing and growing and growing. Every year we've just gotten bigger and have gotten more support. So we're hoping to keep that momentum going, and as time goes on, just connect with more and more groups and really hone in on the coalition part of our acronym.
Yes.
Yes. So
yeah,
I will.
Going away.
Yes, absolutely.
Sweet. Good job, Jade. Good job.
Thank you so much. The amount that you've been able to accomplish in a few years is just incredible. Like creating that space for people to be able to be out. Also, I love all of those themes. I love the themes each year. It's like mix it up, keep it a little bit different, but out of the closet into the streets, I feel like is kind of the forever theme, right? I love it.
It is.
Oh, thank you so much. And speaking of questions, let's go ahead and invite everyone to rejoin us if you would. Folks that are joining us virtually, please feel free to drop questions in the chat, comments. We're just going to take a little bit of time to have a bit of a discussion and answer any questions that you might all have. So I'll just start by kicking off just my musings based on all of the incredible information that you all shared about Pride parades generally, Pride events across our state and our state's history. But one thing that Kate mentioned when she was talking about her research was really that with Pride parades, there's no specific demands, but it's responding to culture, it's responding to society. And then something that deeply resonated with me, when Esteban, you were talking about Helen Bonser, I think she was the one that was interviewed and just said, Spokane was ready this year in 1992. And it just got me thinking about how responsive you can be with Pride events. They're not necessarily one size fits all. They're specific to the community that they're serving, to the community that they're inviting to participate and be a part of what they're doing. So I'm curious if there were any specific events, any specific types of Pride events or programming that you've seen either for your organization, one that you organize, or a different one that resonated with you in a unique way that folks were able to serve that particular community.
Yeah, I can start. Kind of two thoughts. I think all last June is a good reflection moment in that I think us as a nation understood that while June was typically Pride Month, our focus last year was Black Lives Matter, and that it was important for our movement to shift and to reimagine what does inclusion look like and what does it mean, and that it doesn't just extend to gender identity, but it also extends to racial and ethnic identities as well. And so I really do think that last June, it looked like the majority of our organizations had shifted. And then the second thing is COVID. We've had the opportunity to shift June's programming to an actual vaccination clinics. So we were able to provide multiple opportunities for our community to be vaccinated or to get vaccinated because we understand how important it is. You know, I think a lot of folks were saying, or a lot of folks have been saying, like, we've been through a pandemic before, and it's important for us to use the same organizing tools, to use the same motivations that they used in the AIDS crisis to also address and to help meet gaps with our own community now. So those are two thoughts that come to mind.
So incredible, seeing that connection that is being built on the Pride parades that started in 1970 and worked forward, just kind of laying the groundwork for, you know, ACT UP to do things like die-ins and these other like very specific types of protests, building on all of that work. So thinking about how serving that community during this time of a global pandemic and building on the knowledge that that community has actually gathered for themselves to then serve back. That's incredible.
Well, and I was going to add, I thought that was, it's so great that y'all are doing that, Esteban. First, I'll mention you've seen her head. This is our Beatrice. She's our latest. She's wearing her pride onesie for the first time. So if you see a little head, that's what's going on. But during the AIDS crisis and the famous Cap It Bro, pride parades and just the community that they fostered, you know, really allowed the community to tackle that problem in a way that other communities really wouldn't have, because talk about sexuality was so open, talk about, you know, sex itself was open in public in many places. And then you had those resources, and you had people who didn't have qualms about, you know, talking about that openly or throwing condoms outside the bar at night. And so it is a show, you know, of how the community can build that strength, and how the work that y'all are doing every year really can serve our community in times of crisis. So, and Beatrice agrees.
I love that. I wanted to share one of mine, and it's also a shameless plug for how the Historical Society really wants folks to share their collections with us. I'm located in Olympia, and the local grocery store, I saw this poster get put up. So it says, extra, extra, read all about the mini Pride Parade. So Harvey Jones is a couple blocks away from me, and he was 7 last year and decided that he wanted to make sure that there was a space for people to be out and proud in Olympia, even if we couldn't really be together in person. So he organized outside of his house and organized a little walk so people could have a Pride celebration that was distant and safe. I just love this keep your space over here. But that was something that I thought was really interesting to collect and remember that people create that space and build that community. It's not just any one organization or any one individual, but it's community together, and just seeing how people have been responsive. Please make donations to the State Historical Society of pieces of ephemera like this, pictures, digital images from those days. We would love to have representation to see how all of our communities celebrate Pride and are advocates and activists in their own communities. We did get a question, and I'm so excited to talk about this question. So Oliver Webb is joining us, and Oliver would be interested in hearing how each Pride directly works or does not work with the local police department during Pride. Do they table? Do they march? Do they direct traffic? And I know that this has been more of an issue in recent years, navigating that. So anyone want to respond about their particular event?
So we're really vocal with our local PDs. When it was in Hoquiam, they came and made sure that no one harassed us, or really that negativity stayed on the other side of the street. And again, in recent years, when we moved Pride to Aberdeen, same deal. They've been nothing but supportive. They've come and just made sure that Pride stayed a safe space, and that all were welcome as long as you didn't preach hate. So it's been pretty great.
The shows that I had held out there, the cops were like literally 2 doors down from where the shows were, and they would always cruise through the parking lot just to make sure everything was on the up and up. Like, we're very fortunate that they've basically under their wing and make sure to make a presence, to make sure that they're not going to allow for anything negative to happen towards us, which has happened in the past. Whenever we had our protest against the Black Pearl, we had a situation occur that was across the street from us at some apartments that were out there, and we had to call the cops because it was getting wild and crazy, and we really thought they were going to come across the street and like attack all the individuals that were there holding their signs. So yeah, we were not hesitant at all to be like, call the cops out, and they came rolling up real quick and brought them over to talk to us and work it out. Like, if this is what it takes, then this is what it takes. Let's do it. So yeah, we're grateful. We're grateful for them.
It's a tough conversation, and I think everyone presents valid points on all sides, because I think we cannot, we can't be turning a blind eye to injustice. That's not, that doesn't fulfill our purpose or our mission. That also goes against what I believe to be the motivation of Pride too. But at the same time, the threat, especially here in Eastern Washington, is very real. The likelihood that something could happen if we had no protection is high. And so it's a balance. One of the pieces that, whether you take it as encouraging or however you want to interpret it, at least our police department understands how important that day is for our community, and they don't want to do anything to disrupt or get in the way, which we're grateful for. But at the same time, trying to figure out how do we create a model of safety that truly does keep people safe, but that also doesn't uphold the system or doesn't affirm a system that has caused so much harm to our community. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a hard one to navigate.
And sort of just echoing what like Esteban said, it's like the last 2 years we've had, so this year and in 2020, we did a virtual Pride Parade. The police presence in Tacoma Pride Festival may look very differently come 2022. So will there be police presence? Yes, but I think along with everybody else, it'll just be out of safety concerns. But will we allow them to table? That may look very differently next year. And it will really be up to the organization to have that conversation on like their presence there.
It really is finding ways to invite community and balancing safety and comfort of really demonstrating what Pride parades are all about, you know, being out and present and feeling comfortable and confident. And I mean, back from on June 28th, 1970, the first time being able to hold hands out in public, you know, so thinking about holding space and keeping that spirit in mind as we move forward, that's a difficult thing to navigate. So I appreciate all of your answers. We have another question about what can Out and Proud do, as well as the other organizations, Spokane and Tacoma, Rainbow Center, Spokane Pride. What can your organizations do to help other organizations to support community?
That's a great question. And I think that we have tried to make it very vocal on our Facebook page. In particular, we support other organizations. We support our local businesses. We support anyone who needs support. I like that it was said that last year in June, even though it was Pride Month, we knew that Black Lives Matter took priority, and we all came together to really support that movement and support equality for everyone. And so our organization really tries hard to unite the community and unite other organizations. And in the years, we've gotten other organizations and businesses to support us, and we support them. And that's really what our goal is as, you know, Out and Proud Grace Harbor Coalition is. A coalition is bringing groups together for the good of everyone. So as far as what we can do, just let us know and we'll make it happen.
Just email us, like send us whatever you want us to share with our communities, so they have something else to look forward to, not just what we do out here. This is the first year, honestly, that since Pride Month began in June, we've actually seen like 2 other people like out in Ocean Shores that created their own Pride little parties or what have you. And I was like, this is the first year, like something's going on that we get to go do. Like we didn't have to do anything, you know, we get to go and enjoy it and spend time there and help talk about the Pride that we're gonna have yet again another year. But being able to share information with each other and getting it on our website and getting it on our Facebook pages so that everybody has the opportunity to take advantage of whatever celebrations there may be across the state. I feel like maybe even that just alone can help make big waves in the pool.
Yeah, and I will say that a part of what makes Tacoma's Pride Festival so successful is all of these organizations and businesses coming together to sort of recognize Pride throughout the city. You know, it's in a lot of the events that we have happening are in partnerships with the city of Tacoma, with Pierce County, with Alma Mater, with a lot of local restaurants who are offering like discounts for July 10th. You know, we partnered with Wingman Brewery. They produce an IPA for us that will be available at the Mix and at the office actually starting this month. So a lot of the success is because of the community that we have here.
Right, we've been fortunate too.
Oh, go right ahead, Caesar.
Go ahead.
In my role with the United States Association of Prides and with Inner Pride, my role is to support this region of Pride organizers. So not only Washington, but Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, and Wyoming. And what folks don't know, or what I think what's surprising to some folks, is that this is the fastest growing region of new Pride celebrations in the entire world. So we have now, I think, over 45 plus Pride celebrations just within the conglomerate of these 6 states in our region. And we continue to grow. There's more and more popping up. Specifically in Washington, we have Federal Way celebrating their first year. We've got Yakima Pride celebrating their first year as an organization, or maybe their second year as an organization, and then their second or third actual festival. We've got Battleground in southwestern Washington doing some amazing work over there. We also have people popping up in Idaho, Sandpoint, as hosting their very first Pride event. In the middle of Idaho, Coeur d'Alene has been celebrating now for the past 10 years. So there's a lot of movement there. And what I'm learning is it also takes us, everything that everybody's saying, but also what resources do we have? And you'll never know what you have that someone else needs. So for instance, we've got tents, we've got A-frames. They just sit in a storage unit all year long. So if we're not using them, how can I get them to you? I've got pride flags to throw up and down. How can I get pride flags to you? You know, even if it's like, can I send you $150? Can I pay for your way to a conference? Can I help support a retreat? Like anything like that for us, I think is also really crucial. It's not very big, but we're gonna do everything that we can also to make that commitment of showing you and showing other organizations, you know, we're going to do what it takes. And then another part of that is, as we partner with organizations, creating competency, right? Going in and helping folks understand the complexity, helping folks navigate the language, and also giving them the tools they need to work with their communities or with their organizations. And then that way we're all together. So what I'm trying to say is, if you need tents and if you're starting off, we've got tents.
I love that. I feel like one thing that the stepping back in this pandemic has really shown us is that we can have this huge network, like created virtually in this virtual space. It's easier for us to connect with one another, get ideas, share resources, but it's great to know that that's available and out there so that you can support your community and what they need.
Well, I think folks for a long time assumed that we had to do this by ourselves, or they felt like they've had to do it by themselves. And the reality is it takes every single one of us to affect change. So I don't want to waste my time, you know, getting caught up in drama. I don't want to waste my time, you know, trying to outperform somebody. I'm not trying to be the best. I'm trying to advance, you know, our mission, our goals, and the inclusion of LGBTQ plus people. I'd much rather be doing that with you than against you. That's just me.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, I think we've come to the end of our program already. I can't believe it went by so quickly. There was so much great information. I'm so excited about all of the virtual events that have happened, that are coming up, and I'm so excited to get to start seeing people in person again. We have all of these great events coming up in October. This month is Pride in Tacoma. So many incredible events being hosted all around the city for Points of Pride. So make sure you visit all of these great websites, which Len is sharing in the chat right now. It's been a delight to talk to all of you, and thank you for the work that you are all doing in your communities. You're really creating that space and providing an opportunity for people to be together, sharing all of those resources. And I'm so grateful that you joined us this evening. Thank you, thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thanks everybody for sharing.
Thank you.
It's been a good fight.
It's been an absolute delight. So,
thank you all for having me.
To conclude, I'm going to do the plug again. Please, please, please share your Washington State Pride materials with us. You can email our head of collections, margaret.weatherby@wshs.wa.gov, or you can go online and complete the form. We would love to have your digital images, your ephemera, your artifacts from the past, from this year, whatever you're willing to share with us from across Washington State. And again, I want to thank everyone that helped coordinate this program. Thank you to Katherine McFarland Bruce for sharing about her book, Pride Parades, How a Parade Changed the World. Thank you to Out and Proud Grays Harbor Coalition. Thank you to Spokane Pride, and thank you to Tacoma Pride Festival and the Rainbow Center. And also thank you to our partners, KNKX and Columbia Bank, for making the Washington Stay Home Society series possible. Please consider joining us for our next virtual program. It's going to be about In the Spirit Contemporary Native Arts, which we are showing in person at the Washington State History Museum in Tacoma. We're going to be doing a virtual award ceremony on Thursday, July 15th, starting at 6 p.m. And we will be joined by this year's jurors who will be providing those awards. You won't want to miss it. And thank you for joining us for our Washington Stay Home Society series. You can see what's coming up on our website at the link provided right there. Also consider becoming a member or becoming an Evergreen League supporter. As a member, you get free admission to the museum at all times, as well as a subscription to our scholarly magazine, Columbia. It is awesome. And again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. It's been a treat to share about our Pride Parade history in Washington State, and happy Pride to all of you.